Before Warzone, there was Blackout, a mode that was a sensational hit during Black Ops 4, and for many, it still is the definitive Call of Duty Battle Royale. For many at Treyarch, it seemed like they'd be able to get a shot at following up with a sequel even. Today we're going to be taking a look back at what is rumored to be, as we'll probably never get it officially confirmed, the sequel to Blackout, a Blackout 2 if you will, that never came to be, that we as Call of Duty fans were never able to see in any capacity as it may have been intended. Today we're taking a look back at what could have been the greatest offering Black Ops Cold War at this point could have had to offer, but never got a chance to. As we go along, drop your thoughts down below. Blackout or Warzone, and why? And would you have liked to seen a second incarnation of Blackout? Drop your thoughts down below, and if you enjoy the video, do me a favor and drop a like on the video. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button to stay updated with all things retrospective content like this, Warzone, and perhaps even Modern Warfare 2 in the near future. If you'd like to stay up to date with all things COD, I'd love to have you in the community. And finally, my friends over at G Fuel still have code Espresso bumped up to 30% off your entire order for another 36 hours or so. So if you'd like to try something out for the very first time, grab a restock, whatever your case may be, now is as best a time as any to do so. That said, let's jump into it. So, a Blackout 2, a sequel to Black Ops 4's hit mode. Again, as we mentioned, nothing has ever officially been stated that we would have seen something in Black Ops Cold War like this, but there's plenty of breadcrumbs that will lead to this trail to the probable notion that it would have returned if given the opportunity. When you consider how many developers at Treyarch were publicly open about their enthusiasm with Blackout, their hope for another shot at another version of it, that could be your first indication. But when you consider the gameplay implications as well, to me there is no denying it. Cold War's content rollout was almost identical in nature to Modern Warfare 2019's and what eventually became Warzone, and what Black Ops Cold War was looking to set up. Firstly, they started with a step one. Roll out the game and the new features that make the scale of the game look larger than life. Modern Warfare 2019 did this by introducing upwards of 32v32 in Ground War. Introduced first as a way to potentially capture new audiences. Back at this point, there was that big COD versus Battlefield, where it seemed like Call of Duty was trying to steal the player base of Battlefield in a hotly contested year. Black Ops Cold War, though, did it in the way of fireteam, bringing large-scale combat in a different way, a way of a more open world with various objectives, but no clear-cut A versus B. Instead, it was a multi-team combat mode. Modern Warfare also introduced large-scale movement abilities, helicopters, ground vehicles, parachuting mechanics, things like that. Black Ops Cold War did that with fireteam, introducing vehicles, parachuting, zip lines, and armor. Step 2 then, you roll out the entire world and start to sow the seeds of connecting it all together. Modern Warfare introduced Verdansk in a progressive rollout, of course through Spec Ops, but also through Karst River Quarry, Tavors District, Kravnik Farmland, and that was all within the first 2 weeks of right after the launch of the game. Black Ops Cold War rolled out Alpine and Ruka at launch, not visibly connected, but we'll get there. And then step 3, the grand scale world connecting and reveal. Modern Warfare launched Warzone at the point where we had a decent number of connections where you could visibly see the other areas out in the distance. Karst River Quarry, Tavors District, Kravnik Farmland, Port of Verdansk, and I think Zokov Boneyard was also playable at that point as well when we got the world of Verdansk introduced to us. Black Ops Cold War, though, never got to such a spot, but got close. Alpine, Ruka, Sanatorium, Golova, Duga, these were all locations that when you learn about the backbone of it and the initial plans, they would have done the exact same thing. In fact, that's where we can start connecting the dots. If you guys remember back a long while ago, I'm thinking it was June or July of 2020. It honestly wasn't too long after Warzone's launch. That summer, at some point, a bunch of leaks went out about Warzone's new map, in air quotes, coming with the Cold War integration. At that time, it was certainly plausible. We had uncharted territory for Warzone's future. We had the idea that perhaps Warzone would be passed around from each mainline developer, since Raven wasn't given that green light to take over almost exclusively at that point. So the thought was perhaps maybe Infinity Ward was handling the Modern Warfare side of things, Treyarch would handle the Black Ops Cold War year, but most importantly, we had a blueprint of what was supposedly coming, and a very believable one at that. For those that don't remember, I think it was my friend Exclusive Ace who broke the news of all of this. An insider of some kind sent him what was a TAC map, a tactical map similar to the overview that you can see of Verdansk or Caldera, but it was a world that we had never seen before. Now, as much as I would love to show you explicitly on screen what I'm looking at right now as describing this, I can't, as much as that pains me. It's still intellectual property of Treyarch and Activision Publishing, since it was never officially revealed and never officially released to the public. So that would be subject to a video takedown, which would do nobody any good here. We wouldn't be able to discuss the project if the video isn't up. But it's out there, if you know where to look. I'm not saying that you will or won't, but Googling Blackout 2 leaked map, Warzone Ural Mountains map, Blackout 2 map, Black Ops Cold War may do the trick if you want to follow along. But anyways, the blueprint laid out what would later become the connected through line with Cold War, as we saw with Modern Warfare. This leaked map utilized the same Blackout tech, if you want to call it that, in which it had the same compass, same markers, same player icons, but this TAC map had the points of interest of Golova, Duga, Mines, Battery, Ruka, Chemical Labs, Sanatorium, Zoo, Ski Slopes, and Weather Station. Now, if those sound familiar, well, they should, because we saw 6 of those 9 major points of interest in either Fireteam or Outbreak throughout Black Ops Cold War's main year of support. And what's cool is that all of those but one mentioned were exactly the same as their core introduction to the main game. The only one that doesn't have the same geography at a top-down level on the TAC map was Ruka, which, if you guys remember, was a largely wooded area. It was a forest map. But in this iteration, Ruka was actually a more downtown-styled point of interest that was later changed for whatever reason. However, while many may attempt to debunk this, you have to remember this leak happened months before Black Ops Cold War's launch, even before Black Ops Cold War was officially confirmed as Black Ops Cold War, also making it months before the first playable version of Fireteam came out in the second weekend of the Cold War beta. There would have been no way to know these names, the exact overhead play spaces of each map from those particular modes, and more. But here they were, detailed mere months after Warzone's initial launch and making up an entirely new world. What's crazy to me is that looking at the TAC map that was leaked here was just how large in scale this could have been. Now, it's a rough TAC map, it's nowhere near completion to be filled out, but the scale, when you have entire maps of Sanatorium and Ski Slopes on this TAC map taking up only a total of 4.5 cubic grid squares of an 8x8 TAC map with a total of 64 potential squares utilized in the entire thing, this could have dwarfed the size of Warzone potentially, knowing how big those maps in reality actually are. Warzone's grid size is 10 by 10, but with Caldera of 100 grid squares, 35 of them are entirely out of play and there's water off in the distance, with another 10 being either barely in or about half of that grid is out of bounds. So it's hard to accurately depict what the scaling would be properly when points of interest are of different size, when the grid scaling isn't entirely the same, and so on. But we could have seen a massive map here introduced with this. But okay, what if this genuinely was just going to be a Warzone map? A new introduction with Cold War's main year of support, and then Raven got the green light to take over. They crafted Verdansk 84 and then Caldera. Treyarch kind of got left out to not put this into the game. How do we know that this was a Blackout map, if it ever was even one? Short and simple answer, water. Mechanically speaking, we had the most realistic engine in COD at our disposal at the time of Modern Warfare 2019 in Warzone. Realistic animations, reloads, firing animations, modeling, you name it. But despite building out this world of super soldiers that can get all things done in the face of adversity, they're severely hydrophobic. The moment a single toe or anything hits that water, our operators die. Infinity Ward never intended for their game, their application, to build upon water. No interaction whatsoever. And realistically speaking, from a game dev perspective, why would you need to? If it's more of a hassle to create water world conflicts and build out that engine further when there's likely no intention to do so or need to, why would you? But Treyarch has allowed us to play in water since Black Ops 3. With Blackout and Black Ops 4 to follow, as well as Black Ops Cold War, they were no exception. So if we know that these points of interest were directly correlated to maps upcoming in Black Ops Cold War, why in the world would we not be utilizing the same tech while building this world out as the game it's being built for? Why instead would we see this map ported to an engine that doesn't support water with a main large portion of the map in a relatively central location on the map? Why would you have that large an area inaccessible on the map? The answer is that it just wouldn't. The design would never be greenlit. This was, without a doubt in my mind, the planned Blackout 2 map. So what happened to it? Now, as with the rest of this discussion, until we ever get official confirmation, which I don't think we ever will, it's all speculation, but again, all the clues are there. So to me, for months leading up to Verdansk 84, it was thought that this would be coming to Warzone as the next Warzone map at that time. And this was echoed by leaks and data mines for quite some time, but it was a good case study in what you see in the game files isn't exactly always what we get, because while the assumption was that it would be building upon that initial leak and the world that we saw from the very first time it was ever introduced, it never was. What we saw going up to Verdansk 84's launch before we actually realized, okay, we're not getting this Ural Mountains map. Up until that point, it was still the same image that was being referenced by everybody talking about this. So I remember back whenever this happened, that was my big immediate apology, was that I didn't realize this was the same information people were pulling from, and so therefore it would have been a red flag if the sourcing was more widely known or widely available. Because not seeing any development on something for 6 to 8 months giant red flag there. But to know what happened, we kind of have to dig a little bit deeper into the past to come really full circle with everything. Blackout launched to incredible acclaim. It rounded out Black Ops 4's main offering and was heralded as a huge success, despite many being on record saying that it almost wasn't completed in time and that some, as described, said it was a miracle to have worked perfectly at launch. When you, as a creator, build something that was insanely well received, that you really liked doing, that you had a blast developing, naturally you want to do it again or build on it more. But Blackout was limited to Black Ops 4. We didn't see it, of course, transcend into any other games. It wasn't standalone as an application or executable on its own. It was tethered to Black Ops 4, which in and of itself caused many problems. A bit of trivia here: if you ever wondered why we didn't get more points of interest other than Hijacked and Ghost Town, or even why I think it was Operation Apocalypse Z with a nighttime map where they had to remove the windows of buildings, it was all memory constraints. It was severely limited in that degree for what Black Ops 4 had to offer and what they could utilize. So when you have the prospect of being able to make another version greenlit where you can allocate more dev time, more resources, perhaps more so to the point way further than ever thought possible, of course you're taking that, which is what I guarantee almost happened here. What we saw of this TAC map was an early in-development build of Blackout 2.0 or Blackout 2. Some points of interest sculpted, crafted up, maybe even having playable builds starting to be placed in a singular world's map, but you have to remember how development works. Everything happens months in advance from when we see it. The reference that I always come back to is the first time that I ever went to a DLC event for Call of Duty. That was back in Black Ops 3. I was there for DLC 2, and at that point when we were at Treyarch, I was talking with Jason Blundell, who at the time of them gearing up for the launch of DLC 2, we were there to actually grab footage of that pre-release. He said that they were finishing up the final touches on DLC 4, which was a span of 4 months and 18 days later from the DLC 2 launch. So take that scaling and kind of apply it here. This leak that came in June or July of 2020, 4 months earlier than that would have been February or March. So maybe start to see this connection here. But what was leaked, while never being updated again, was likely that endpoint, that leaked version of Blackout 2, because it was scrapped at that point essentially. In February or March of 2020, word would have gotten out that Warzone would in fact be free to play, standalone, and going to be supported even after the launch of the game following Modern Warfare. This would have been a company-wide address, and from all indications we've seen so far about Warzone's development, even with developers on record stating that Warzone's free-to-play standalone nature was something of a surprise to even Infinity Ward. It wasn't planned with the conceptualizing of the mode, but it's what happened. So if I'm a betting man, this map that was leaked, that was where they were when building out Blackout 2. But then, with the announcement that it would no longer be needed, instead of just scrapping, throwing everything out, and starting fresh on brand new content for Black Ops Cold War, they instead pivoted and made it more so content we'd see in the future in different ways, i.e. Fireteam and Outbreak. Both utilize some of the core fundamental mechanics that we would have seen in a Blackout: a larger world, larger player counts, or I guess not really larger player counts in the sense of Outbreak, but zip lines, parachutes, vehicles, the whole 9 yards. You take this Blackout map you had already planned and a lot already completed from development, section it off, and put it into different maps that we saw released throughout the year. Outbreak was even released around that 1-year anniversary of when Warzone would have come out. It was 11 months after the launch of Warzone. So it could have been something, but we instead got that Zombies open world offering. Zombies even went a step further, adding maps like Zoo into the Outbreak equation, building even further off of some of those points of interest that were already finished or worked upon with that Blackout world in mind. So to me, when I look at Fireteam, when I look at Outbreak, while it may be wildly popular for some and not for others, it really seems to me like a byproduct of making best of a worst case scenario, having so much work into something and having the rug be pulled out from underneath it, which may make me appreciate those modes a little bit more. But still, it sucks that we could have seen a Blackout 2 here at some point within Black Ops Cold War, and that the plans seemingly were there. Going forward, I don't think that we'll see a development of a new map like this happening for whatever Treyarch has cooking up next in what is now probably 2024. Warzone is 1000% that heavily invested battle royale and extracurricular modes and say plunder that we'll see going forward. Activision's already seen how successful it is, so why would you change it up? Why would you take a gamble from something that's worked so clearly and instead change everything while offering the same gameplay mechanics, kind of? It wouldn't make sense. So we were very, very close, it seems, to a Blackout sequel, but the world will probably never get to see what actually was meant to be. So that said, that's where we're going to wrap it up. Today I want to take a little bit of casual conversation, stroll down memory lane, and take a look at what if. So let me know your thoughts down below. Would you guys have liked to see a Blackout 2 here within Black Ops Cold War, or potentially as a standalone? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts down below. But if you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, drop a like on the video. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things retrospective content like this, perhaps other looks at Blackout content if you want to see some stuff like that in the near future. Warzone, Modern Warfare 2 content here maybe in the near future as well. Whatever the case, if you guys are interested in staying up to date with all that, I'd love to have you in the community. That said, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.